Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Every time it rains, lots of water washes off your roof. With a rain barrel, you can catch that water and use it to water your garden. Also, there are a lot of bugs that want to eat your trees. We'll let you know what to do to keep them off. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Goodwin's Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Tanya Ashworth. Tanya is our local garden expert, okay? And Mr. D is here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Tanya, rain barrels. So let me ask you this first. Why do we need to install a rain barrel?
Well, a rain barrel is a great water conservation tool. It allows you to capture all the runoff or some of the runoff coming off of your roof when it rains and save it for uses around your home, such as filling bird baths, washing your car, or my favorite way to use it, watering the plants around my yard.
Sure. Okay, now can you walk us through the process of installing a rain barrel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We can do that. First, I wanted to tell you how much water you can catch, if that's okay. Did you know that the average Tennessee roof has 30,000 gallons of water coming off of it every year?
That's a lot.
That's a lot of water. And this is only a 55-gallon drum, and I would say if you're going to install a rain barrel, get the largest one that you can.
Okay.
Because if you have a 1,000-square-foot roof and you get a 1-inch rain, you're going to have something like 623 gallons of water coming off of your roof.
Wow.
Of course, one rain barrel is going to service probably a quarter of your roof.
Right.
So the bigger the rain barrel, the better.
The better, right.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of water. You think about it, it comes off your roof.
It is a lot of water.
So what's our average rainfall amount here in Shelby County? Would you know
47 inches in Tennessee is our average rainfall. So you're going to have a lot of water. You'd be surprised. I have a rain barrel at my house. It's very similar to this that I put together. And I'm telling you, 5 minutes, it's full in a rain. Yeah, so
wow,
it catches the water fast.
Yeah, because we have some pretty violent rain events, and you know the rain comes down pretty tough here.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Wow,
and you know, actually, the problem would be when you know we're going to have a lot of rain coming. You want to open up the spigot on the bottom and maybe use a ooze hose or a water hose to direct the water away from your foundation, because this will fill up so fast that you'll have more than you can handle. Sometimes we know that we're going to have a large rain event, and sometimes we don't. So that's a good thing to do too.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to get our rain barrel going, first you have to have the barrel, a nice food grade barrel, a good quality, and then you have to cut the hole in the top. I would say at least a 4-inch hole. You can use a hacksaw or something like that to do it, or you can buy this hole saw bit that goes onto your electric drill. Mr. Dennison is going to be our tool person today, our assistant, and he is going to drill our holes, but this is going to be the hole where the gutter is going to be directed.
Okay.
So,
is that tool guy?
Go ahead.
Are we ready?
I think so. If you want to cut our hole.
All right. We got power. Let's see. I'm probably going to turn around here. And I'm going to put my glasses on.
Put your glasses on, that's right.
For safety, and I can actually see now. Voila.
All right. How about that?
Great job.
How about that?
That circle is as straight as the line that was laid
drawn.
there.
How about that?
That is awesome. All right, so to finish that off, one thing you would need to do is get a piece of metal mesh and just cut a little piece with 10 snips which is super easy to do at home, and then just screw it down because this is going to keep things like leaves and acorns and all that stuff that's coming off your roof, keep it out of your barrel. So you want a way to filter the water that's coming out. The next thing that we need to do is put in our hose bib, and this is a 3/4 inch spigot hose bib. But you have to use a 1-inch drill bit to drill the hole because you have to have a little room to get it in there. And you can use Teflon tape to make it watertight. So you just wrap your little Teflon tape around the threads there and then thread it in after the hole is drilled out. You're going to put your hole on the opposite side of where your downspout's going to go here. So, and you want your spigot to be maybe 3 or 4 inches off of the bottom so that you can get your watering bucket or your watering can under there. Now, a rain barrel this size is not going to have enough water pressure to run like a hose. You're not going to walk around your yard with a hose,
Right.
you know, watering stuff like this. This is mostly for hand watering and things like that. So, you want me to mark the spot?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to say maybe there.
X marks the spot.
Okay.
All right.
I may need some help holding this,
Okay,
Chris.
yeah, we can do that. See where you want to hold that, huh?
See what we got here. Voila.
All right.
Wonderful. Now we're ready to put in our spigot.
So just put Teflon tape around it?
You can also use caulk instead of the Teflon tape.
I'm not a plumber.
That'd be good. Well, you look like you might have done it a time or two.
Now let's see what happens, huh?
I will see.
Put it that way? One more?
Yeah, it'll go, I think.
Won't work, will it?
No.
Right there?
All right.
How about that?
That's a great job.
Good deal.
Let's set it up.
Thank you so much. Mr. D is handier with tools than I am.
Oh, he's good.
So there we go. It's all we would have to do is add the mesh to the top, and then for your gutter, you're going to want to make sure that you get it's a flexible piece that connects the downspout to aim it over your hole. You may be wondering, well, what about mosquitoes?
Right.
If I have standing water in my yard when I have mosquitoes. And you will have mosquito larvae in your rain barrel, but
Yes,
they
you
make a
will.
product for that. It's called mosquito dunks. And they contain BT, which is an organic pesticide. And it's totally safe. You can still use the water for your bird baths. Your cat or dog can drink out of the water. It won't hurt anything but your mosquito larvae, but it kills mosquito larvae. And you're probably wondering, after I screw down that mesh screen, how am I going to get this in here? These are very crumbly, so you just take maybe half a dunk and crumble some in there, and that's all you have to do to keep the mosquitoes out of your rain barrel.
Okay.
And then the last thing I wanted to make sure I told you, you're going to want to raise your barrel off the ground, because the higher off the ground, the better the water pressure you're going to have. Now this thing's going to be
Set it on
heavy
something
when
like
it's
that?
full. You want to use like concrete cinder blocks. That's what I've got mine on at home. And make sure it's level, make sure it's secure, because when this thing is full, the water's very heavy. It's going to weigh about 450, 460 pounds.
Wow.
So make sure that you think about if you have small children and
Small pets.
yes,
Yeah.
that they can't knock it over.
Right. All right. So this is our rain barrel.
Yeah.
And actually, you could probably paint this if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah, a lot of
Put some
people do.
design on it or something like that. I think it'd be pretty neat.
It'll be camouflage. you know.
Or camouflage.
Yeah, you could, yeah. And you know, if you're worried about it being an eyesore, big plastic barrel, put it in the backyard, you know, around the back of the house, and let it serve as a, you know, a fourth of your roof back there. So.
All right, Tanya. And Mr. D,
Yeah,
our tour
thank
guide,
you.
we definitely appreciate that demonstration. I hope the folks appreciate that as well. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mr. D, tree bugs.
Yep, we got some right here in front of us.
Yeah.
Yep. Bagworms. Let's talk about bagworms
Okay,
first. We
let's
have
do
three little cocoons right here. You know, if you see those right now, they're done. They've already they are pupated, and there's one generation of bagworms per year, and they hatch out in, you know, mid to late May, early June, and that is really the only time you can do anything about it. So if you got that problem right now, just pick off the ones you can reach, and because that will do some good, because these things are going to, actually they'll overwinter as eggs in one of these pouches, you know, and if you happen to pick off the pouch that has the eggs, it's full of eggs, then you'll help your population next year.
Yeah, and those are about 300 eggs
In each pouch.
in each pouch.
Wow.
Or cocoon.
300 or more.
But just keep in mind, if you had a problem this year, you're going to have a problem next year probably, and
yeah.
so you're going to have to treat before you see the problem next year. I mean, when the caterpillars are really small, they're easy to kill with BT. Bacillus thuringiensis is one of the best products to use. Late May, if you spray the trees that you've had a problem with. And BT is a product that you can use in a hose-end sprayer. You know, you just want to, BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, it's a bacteria, and you just want to get it up in the tree, where when the caterpillars feed on it, it'll give them a very, very bad stomachache and they'll die. So that's the thing on the bagworms. Not a whole lot that you can do now, but except maybe pick a few of them off if you can reach them.
Okay.
This is the fall webworm, and it's not even fall yet.
Yeah, it's not fall.
You know, these ought to be called summer, fall
Should
webworms, I guess. But classic web, always out on the end of the branches. Also, the BT product, the same product that we talked about killing the bagworms, will also do a pretty good job on the fall webworms. They're unsightly. They're not going to kill the tree. They really, really like pecan trees. What kind of tree is that on? There's not enough leaves left.
It's a peach tree.
That's a peach tree. They like fruit. They like ornamental and you know, fruit and nut trees. They really like.
Yeah, that peach tree is actually out of my yard.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's my sample.
the tree's still alive, isn't it?
It's still alive.
Yeah, it's still alive. But really not a whole lot to worry about. I do know that all winter long, I've got a lot of pecan trees in my house, and all winter long these webs will fall off, and you'll have a big mass of webs and leaves, and that'll fall off every once in a while on the ground. They'll be scattered around, but my lawnmower, the mulching blade, does a good job of chewing them up as I'm chewing up the other leaves.
I usually just open that up and let the birds come in and do their job.
They like the caterpillars, and that is a defense mechanism because it's hard for a bird to get in there. A bird's not going to try to tear into that on its own.
Yeah.
So if you help them a little bit, they'll get in there and eat them.
How many generations are we talking about?
I think there's 3 generations per year on the fall webworm. Unlike the eastern tent caterpillar, which only has, you know, the early spring, it only has 1 generation per year. But I think there are 3 generations of the fall webworm per year, starting early, you know, in June and going through the fall.
Yeah, I've seen a lot out now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, any more tree bugs out there that we need to know about? You know, for our ornamentals or fruit trees?
You know, probably aphids on pecans, and some of the maple trees will be secreting honeydew, and there'll be some sap. Folks say it's sap dripping off the trees onto my car and onto my lawn furniture and all that. It's really not sap out of the tree. It's honeydew out of aphids, which is, I guess, indirectly sap.
Yeah,
Just run through
indirectly.
a aphid, and it's really aphid poo-poo, technically, is what it is. But you may be seeing that this summer. But I don't know, what kind of calls are you getting at the extension office?
Borers, of course.
Oh man, that's a tough one too.
That's a tough
on
one.
the fruit trees and
Fruit trees, especially peach trees. So you know what that is.
peach tree borer. So
Peach tree borer.
basically, I don't know of anything. I think still in the Red Book they recommend Dursban as that might get in there. Now, there is a parasitic nematode that at one time was showing some promise that you could spray on the area of infection and the nematode would go up in and kill the borer. And I don't know, I haven't heard much about that lately, so I wouldn't count on that saving your tree.
Okay.
I'd say if you have a peach tree infected with peach tree borer, you pretty much write it off.
Wow.
Plant something else after you take that.
Yeah, because
one out.
then timing critical if you're trying to control the peach tree borer.
Exactly. Mid-June, early to mid-June, you have to keep a protective insecticide coat on the base of that tree. Spray the base and lower limbs with Dursban is again the product of choice for that if you can still get that. And the commercial growers will use Lordsban, which is chlorpyrifos, the active ingredient in that product.
Isn't it also really bad on your ornamental cherry trees? Is that the same insect?
Any kind of
Yeah.
fruit, peach, plum, and nectarine especially, but the ornamental, peach plums and cherries.
Yeah,
and
it seems
things
like everything
that.
in a prunus genus.
Yeah.
Right.
For the most part, your stone fruits.
It's actually the adult. You never see the adult. It's looks more like a wasp than a moth, but it's a moth that is the adult, and I don't think I've ever seen one out.
Wow,
I
okay.
guess they're nocturnal, and the only way to control them is to prevent them, in my opinion. And that's what the commercial guys have to do.
Okay. We did get a couple of calls about stink bugs and pecans.
Stink bugs and pecans. 2 bricks, watch your thumbs.
Oh,
Watch your thumbs,
2 bricks.
They're some of the pyrethrins will, when you spray it directly on them, will take them out. But stink bugs are very strong flyers, and you can kill every stink bug in your yard, and they'll fly in from your neighbors. So if you've got a small specimen tree, you can go out there and treat, because they mess your pecans up. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and they'll stick their proboscis in the fruit, the soft fruit, and they'll inject a substance and then start pulling, that will kind of dissolve the inside of that pecan, and then they'll suck it out, and that's why the pecan will go on and it will mature, and you'll have little black spots in the fruit and or in the pecan meat, and won't hurt you to eat it, but
Right.
I'd prefer not to have the little spots in my pecans.
Yeah, I'm sure most folks would.
But the only thing is to use one of the pyrethrins if you have a small tree that you can spray. But a big tree,
Yeah, don't worry about it.
this one.
All right, Mr. D. Here's our Q&A session. Tanya, help us out, please.
All right.
All right. Here's our first viewer email. For the last couple of years, my hydrangeas have been growing well, but they won't flower. I do cut back the previous year's old stalks. They look dead, he says. But my wife tells me that's where the blooms come from. Is she right? What can I do to encourage my hydrangeas to bloom next year? And this is from Mike from Ringgold, Georgia. All right, so Ringgold, Georgia. So Tanya,
Well, Mike,
is the wife right?
I believe she is. I believe she's
okay.
right on this
You
one.
need to listen to his wife.
Yes, if
Yeah.
you have a mop head or a lace cap type hydrangea, your old-fashioned hydrangeas, they bloom on old wood. There are some that bloom on old and new wood. Those are your ever-blooming hydrangeas, but they're going to say on the plant label when you buy it at the store, you're going to know for sure that's what you've got.
Yeah.
But most of your common hydrangeas they bloom on the old wood. So I would say don't prune them at all if you can help it. But if you've got one that's just, you really need to prune it back, the best time to do it And there's still no guarantee you're not cutting off some blooms for next year, but the best time is immediately after they flower, before they have time to set the next year's buds for the blooms. So yeah, try not to prune them, but if you do, right after flowering. If you wait till the fall, it's over with, no blooms.
All right, Mr. Mike, so the wife is right. Yeah. So that's what happened to your blooms. So be careful. All right, appreciate the question. So here's our next question. How do you control scales that are on my magnolia tree? What do y'all think about that one? Any thoughts, Tonya?
Well, you could use a horticultural oil, maybe a summer oil, because you want to be careful when you use horticultural oil that you don't get leaf burn. That's not something you want to do in 90-degree weather here in the Mid-South in the summer.
That's right.
Unless I'd wait till the fall to do that, to apply oil, because it can burn the leaves. And you may have to apply more than once, or if you use an insecticidal soap, you may be applying several times. It's not something that's going to be easily controlled by those measures. Or you can use a soil drench. Imidacloprid is the active ingredient in several products. You can mix it up in water and just pour it around the base of the tree, and it's a systemic, so it goes up through the vascular system of the plant. So when those scales suck the moisture out of your plant, they're getting some of that insecticide too, and that should take care of the scale. It's probably the easiest method, and it's very effective, the imidacloprid.
And again, the soil drenches are something that we do recommend at UT Extension. It is in our red books. So you can use those. Mr. D, did you want to add anything else to that?
I was just going to say, fortunately, the magnolia scale only has one generation per year, and the crawlers are active in July and August, and that would be a really good time to try to kill them. The crawlers are easier to kill than the adult.
And something else too, and Tonya talked about it a little bit, you have to get good coverage. Good coverage. Underneath, up top. I mean, you have to do that if you want to control these critters, that's for sure. All right, so here's our next question. A guy taking care of my lawn hit my 5-inch maple tree and ripped off a 3x5-inch hunk of bark. With a piece of bark missing, will I be able to save my maple tree? Tonya, I see you pondering that. What do you think about that?
Possibly. The first thing I would do is go get a bag of mulch. And mulch the tree, because it's going to prevent further damage from the lawnmower.
Oh, okay. There you go. Okay. I'm following you.
Keep them away from the tree.
Yes, it will keep you and whoever is...
Mulch correctly.
Yes.
Mulch correctly.
That's right.
We're talking 2 to 3 inch layer, not piled up around the trunk, but spread evenly around the tree. And that way it's a nice little circle. You don't have to worry about a weed eater getting next to it or a lawnmower getting next to it. What you don't want to do is spray over it, or the tree will heal itself in most instances. If not too much, if the cut wasn't too deep, the tree will usually heal itself. Make sure that it gets plenty of moisture. Don't let it undergo any stress, and you could check for some signs. Periodically check to see if there's any insect problems, borers getting in there. But first thing you want to do is go mulch your young trees.
Is that from experience?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You sounded pretty adamant about that, but I do agree, It's the old, weed eater blight.
Weed eater blight,
Weed eater blight of the lawnmower damage. Mr. D, anything to add to that?
No.
Well, I tell you, Tonya's been covering it today, I tell you.
You got it.
But, something I will say, too. Now, this is, 5-inch, okay. But underneath that bark is the phloem layer, okay? Of course, that takes food to the roots. So, that thing starts dying out, you start having leaves falling off that tree, then there's a case that maybe it's not going to make it.
Yeah. It's hard to say without a picture of it.
It is.
Without knowing how deep the cut is.
It is.
Yeah, it says 3 to 5 inch hunk of bark. If it's 3 inches wide and 5 inches tall, you have a better chance of it surviving than if it's 5 inches wide and on a 5-inch tree than 3 inches tall. But I do know trees, for the most part, do a really, really good job of putting a natural barrier between damaged tissue and healthy tissue, and they generally can heal up, scab over, and that will probably, you'll never know that happened 20 years from now. But one thing, you mentioned something, trees that are injured like that, that are stressed like that, do tend to attract secondary insects.
Oh, yes, they do.
And so do keep an eye on that, and you might have to hit it with an insecticide every once in a while if you see something getting in there, boars or something getting in there that ought not to be in there.
And it's usually boars.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
that's usually when you see the boars. You know,
Right.
they're secondary for the most part.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, especially on your maple trees. So you have to be careful with that, that's for sure. All right, so Tanya, Mr. D, we're out of time. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us a letter or an email with your gardening questions. Send your email to familyplot@wkno.org. The mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next time for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.